folks. Welcome to the Future of Faith podcast. I'm Josh Packard, the co-founder of Future of Faith.
I'm Keedren Boston, ministry practitioner here at Future of Faith.
In each episode of this podcast, we're going to break down one key research finding from our brand new study about listening and faith formation. I'll give you the national perspective, trends, and insights.
I take Josh's big fancy data and make it, useful. Spoiler alert. Not everything works, but I'll keep it real with how it actually plays out in ministry.
That's right. We believe listening isn't just a skill, it's a sacred tool.
So let's talk about what happens when listening leads the way.
This is the Future of Faith.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Keedren Boston.
And I'm Josh Packard.
You are joining us once again for the Future of Faith podcast, and we're going to keep this thing going. Last episode, we talked about how important it is to be relatable, right? Now we're moving on to the point of reliability, because that's key, for consistency. So I want to talk about this a core point of reliability, right? This idea, reliability signals to the speaker that their voice matters and will be remembered, right? That's important. Trust is built over time through that consistency of showing up. Josh, you have an interesting story, Ben, that you shared with me that I think our listeners need to hear about an experience that you had with one of your students.
Well, yeah, it was actually not just with one of my students. I mean, it was one student in particular that changed my entire approach to how I was doing advising. So when I was a professor advising, I had like 100+ advisees at any given time. And I don't know, Keedren, if this was your experience, but for my students, advising was really just like I held their PIN number hostage until they came to see me, tell me what classes they wanted to take, and then I would give them their PIN number and then they could register, right? And really what this was like an attempt on the university's part to make sure students were progressing toward degree in an orderly fashion. That is not what I thought advising was for. I wanted to be Robin Williams and Dead Poet Society, right? Like, I was like, we're in the office, like, let's change your life.
Right.
Yeah. And like, let's talk about what it means to you to live the good life and how that was not what advising was at a state school. But that's what I wanted to turn it into. So I made my students come to my office, and then I would talk to them like, what do you want to be when you grow up? What are your hopes and dreams? Blah, blah, blah. Right. And then when they would leave my office and get their PIN number, I would like scribble this stuff down on a note card, and I had a file for each student. I would drop the note card in, and before they came back the next time, because I would only see them twice a semester, right? I couldn't remember all of that stuff. Yeah. And so right before, their allotted 15-minute or whatever appointment, I pull out the note card to remind myself of where we left off our last conversation. And, and then we'd be able to sort of pick things up. And my student, some of my students would be astonished that I remembered, and I was like, wow. And then one time the student, she caught me, right? Mm-hmm. She was like, well, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, sorry, that was the notes I took from our last conversation.
Yeah.
And the whole time I've been like sort of keeping this secret because I thought this was going to be like a massive bearing. Like if they knew that I had to take notes just to remember the important things about their lives, that I thought that they would stop trusting me. And so that's why I was trying to do it on the down low. But she was like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean? And she goes, we write down the things that you say. None of my professors ever write down anything I say. Man. And what it dawned on me, obviously, in that moment was that she actually had this interpretation of that event, that somebody would care enough to write stuff down so they could, be a better advisor in this case to her, was like the most honoring thing that she could think of in that moment, that I wasn't just winging it. And so from then on, I just started taking notes in front of students, and they loved it. Like,
man.
And of course, I'd see them, the months would go by, and sometimes I'd be like, last time we met, you said you wanted to, you wanted to be a statistician. But then, you failed the 2 stats quizzes in my class. And they're like, yeah, I'm not going to do that anymore. Or whatever it was. So it's this like core idea here behind reliability, that like you remember things and you follow up. But if you're in ministry and you've got, I don't know, Keedren, how many kids do you have in your ministry?
100+, man.
100+.
Yeah.
There's no way you can remember. I mean, trying to remember all their names is a challenge. Right. Let alone
it is.
You know? let alone every detail about their life. And so one of the things, like when I talk to youth professionals, especially, but a lot of times even adult ministers too, that they struggle with this idea of like, well, I'd love to do relational ministry. In fact, I had one say it to me this way. They said, I'm so afraid that of even asking a question about somebody's life because I'm afraid that they'll tell me and then I'll be responsible for remembering it. And I know I don't have the capacity to do that.
Wow.
And I was like, oh man, what a terrible place. Like genuinely in your heart and for your ministry and for that person, you know that you can like help them get closer to God by asking personal questions, but you don't have a system for it. Like you don't have any way. So that's the key. I mean, this has been a long meandering way of getting.
No, but that's good.
You got to have a system, right? Like my system was 3x5 note cards dropped into a hanging folder. I don't know if that's a great system.
It worked for you, right?
It worked for me in that place. I'm not sure to do it again in that way, but but I think the key is like just let go of this idea that somehow you can or should be able to remember everything, about all 100+ kids that you serve, or all the adults in your Sunday school class or whatever it is. You can, but that doesn't mean that you're absolved of the responsibility for being reliable. You still need to find a way to be reliable, and systems can help us with that.
I agree. There's a gentleman that I love listening to. He's a leader. His name is Jermone Glenn. And one of the things he shared with us was you use technology for your memory and you use your mind for creativity. Right?
That's great.
And so having a system in place is important so that we can be reliable, right? Because that matters. I'm going to try my best to remember every story, every name, every birthday. I'm going to do that. Like that's my mindset, and I encourage our leaders to do the same thing. But it's impossible, virtually impossible, but taking notes and being mindful of those situations that stand out to you that you want to remember, do whatever you can.
Yeah.
For us.
And you had Keedren, and we could talk through some of these like very practical ways of doing this. So now today, as a person who travels a lot, and I meet people from all over the country, I'm very lucky to get to do that and hear about the amazing things going on. The way I keep track, I use an app called Dex, DEX, which imports all of my contacts, allows me to make notes, keep track of birthdays. I'm still not probably as good as I should be, but it helps me. It helps me to know like, oh, I'm going to San Diego. Who lives in San Diego? Like, and I see a list of people. I'm like, cool, we should have lunch or get coffee or whatever. But you have this, like, one of the first things we talked about when we met was this system that you have created for being able to do this at a very, very, very local level. That isn't a fancy app,
right?
Right. But it's like wildly powerful. Will you share it here?
Yeah, man. Yeah, thanks for asking, man. We actually created in the lobby of our youth ministry a calendar. It's a huge calendar I built, decorated, and everything like that with a dry erase. It's a dry erase calendar, and so we utilize it monthly to put birth dates, to put events that our students have, whether it's, any sports games that they may have or it can be
concert.
Whatever it is, right? Any life events that they want us to be aware of.
Midterms, exams.
All of that, right? So we can pray for them on it. We can show up if it's something that we are able to, but at least we're aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's been beautiful to do that. Of course, it took time, for us to like remind the students, like, this is for you. Like, I don't want to see that calendar empty because I want to know what's going on. And we don't always remember, but at least we want to be aware of what's happening so we can support you in different ways, right? We may not always be able to show up, right? But at least we can follow up with them if we're not able to show up.
Yeah.
And that is a blessing. Like, recently had a young man, invite me to his basketball games, and he had a basketball tournament, and I wasn't too sure of my schedule at the time, but I said, I'm gonna write it on I'm right there in front of him. Like, okay, where's it at? Okay, this is the time. Cool. All right. I'll check my schedule. I will show up, if I don't have this thing or whatever it was. I'm honest and transparent with him. But at least if I'm not able to show up, I'm praying for you. Hope you do well, but we'll talk about it on Sunday. Right. And so because with you, there's no gray area, right? Either you can or you can't.
Yeah,
But
that's right. Don't make promises you can't keep.
right. Oh, please, right? But if we're proactive and have a conversation and let them know, hey, this is what what the things that I will be able to do. No promises here, but I can promise you that we'll talk about it on Sunday, that I'll follow up. And that's exactly what
Or you can text them, or you can have,
yep,
you can involve others. This is what we talked about, the scalability of relational ministry.
sure.
This is part of the way that you begin to scale this out from just you. Is
Yeah.
like, look, if I can't go, maybe somebody else can, but guaranteed, like you said, if we can't show up, we'll follow up. Like you're going to hear from us in some way.
Yes. I've even let our staff know, like, that's what this calendar is for. So if you walk through this place, this area, and, take a look at the calendar, if you can show up for them, this is the time and the place where they'll be. Or if you see them in the hallways, or you're able to follow up with them as well. And now, we have this intergenerational connection where people that may not even serve in youth ministry see them, and they're like, hey, how was your game, the other day, right? And that just, it makes the community, brings us together. And then also it lets them know that you are a part of this bigger story too. It's not just about what we do here, but we want to know there's more people that care about you than you realize. And that really adds to the reliability, like, that aspect of like, man, they have put something in place. Like, we can count on them, No, we're not perfect. We're still working. We're still growing. But that consistency is always key. What they say, consistent, that's the cheat code. That's the only cheat code. It's to be consistent.
Consistency is the cheat code. That's right. Well, and I mean, obviously, like, how powerful for kids who often feel dismissed and overlooked that adults aren't paying attention to them, to let them know, look, there's a whole community of people around here who care about you. But don't sleep on how important that is for adults too. Especially a lot of adults who feel like they spend their whole lives serving others and that nobody, is taking care of them or looking out for them. But I imagine it's a fine line, or not a fine line, but like you said, it's black and white. Like, the minute somebody starts to put something on that calendar and nothing happens, nobody shows up and nobody follows up, man, that thing is dead in the water, right?
Sure, yeah.
But conversely, I bet it wasn't long before, you started encouraging kids to put stuff up on the calendar, and then you started following, and then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, cool. Oh, I know this is going to happen. So
yeah, you get the flow.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, and so let's talk. So like all that, I mean, I love that example. I mean, I think this is just, it's such a brilliant analog, like lo-fi counterpart to, my app that I type everything into that automatically imports contacts, right? Like either of these can work. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be Salesforce or Apple Notes. Like it could be either or. And the data tell us exactly how, like, incredibly impactful this is. So 70% of adults, about the same number of teenagers, say things like they trust someone more when they listen and follow up rather than simply sharing their own thoughts, right? They say that remembering details from previous conversations is important to building trust. So we know it's important. And we also know that we can't just keep it in our heads. So we got to have a system. But perhaps more importantly than those things about, leading to trust is, well, what does this do for their faith lives? And 60% of adults have said that they have grown in their faith because someone followed up to express care or concern about an issue. Like, we can get carried away with fancy theologies and thinking we got to put together the exact right curriculum or say the right sermon. But we should also be thinking, like, there's a very simple thing we can do, which is remember that somebody, has a sick mother, and following up in a week or so and say, hey, I've been praying about your mom. Just wondering how she's doing. I hope you're okay. Like that is also impactful on your actual faith life.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a beautiful thing. And it's so true. Because I think about personal experiences where even as a leader, I'm just going and, doing the best I can to lead and to grow leaders. And then I may have a student to check on me. I lost my brother in December 28, 2021. And I have students to check on me still. You know what I mean? To see how are you doing? They'll ask about my mom or whatever, and so even for adults, like that matters when you have
Yeah,
People that
totally.
check on you about the things that concern you. Yeah.
It's been some of the most like, I mean, personally, like for me, it's been some of the most moving and touching moments of the last couple of years when people that I didn't even, it's not that I didn't know that we were friends, but like I didn't know that they were thinking about me. It's like in that, it would reach out and ask, how's this thing going? Like I saw X or Y or Z on LinkedIn, or somebody mentioned this to me, and I just want to check in with you and see, how you're doing with it. And it's been speaking personally, like that has reminded me of like the kingdom of God is big and includes me.
Man, that's good. That's good, Josh. Yeah.
It's not just like, these aren't just abstract data points. I think we've all probably felt that way when, if we've been lucky enough to have somebody who does that.
Yeah. It's important to note, to think about that. Yeah.
One of the things that, I think is worth sharing here is that this idea of like, well, how do you be reliable consistently? Like, we know it's a posture, like in the conversation, Aubrey, 34-year-old that we interviewed for this, she says, I feel like if someone does that basic thing of following up, then that they're at least paying attention to you, right? She says, repeating back some things that I said, or just asking a lot of deep follow-up questions, that seems kind of basic. But I feel like you can tell when someone is listening to you or is not. So that's important. Like in that moment, one-on-one with somebody, to be able to repeat back some things to make it clear that you're listening. But on a bigger, more systematic level, I don't mean bigger in terms of importance. I just mean like when you're dealing with more than one individual across from you, that idea of like, how can we gather this information that we're hearing in a way that allows for us to be reliable to, when I have 50, 100, 150, 200 people.
Yeah.
Well, that's at the core of all these sacred listening tools that we've been building. And without getting too deep in them, because this isn't a podcast about those tools, but I'll say that it's not impossible. Ministry professionals, a lot of times they'll want to say, well, you can't really scale relational approaches to ministry, but lots of other fields have done it. We think about salespeople, we think about fundraisers and community organizers, and those aren't perfect analogs. They can be a little bit more transactional than what we're going for in ministry, which is transformational. But they use tools, man. Like they use spreadsheets and they use Salesforce, and so find your tool is what I'm saying. Whether that's
your tool,
find something that allows you to capture information, search for it, maybe get an alert, set a reminder, but find your system, find your tool to be able to make yourself actually reliable in the ways that people need.
That's so good. That's good.
Okay, so let's just wrap up here. Keedren, some key practices, 3 of them to be reliable. Follow up on previous conversations to show genuine interest and care. Be present and dependable. So create a safe, consistent space for sharing. You've heard the example here of the calendar that Keedren was talking about a couple episodes ago. You were talking about circle time. Both of these are excellent ways of doing this. And third, demonstrate some confidentiality and respect for the speaker's boundaries. So know what to share and what not to share with others, and ask permission. So that way you're knowing, you're conveying that you're being thoughtful in that way.
Yeah.
Third part of this how to listen segment of the podcast, we covered reliability, we've covered relatability. Keedren, what's coming next?
Curiosity.
Everyone, in the next episode, we're going to cover the third leg of this 3-legged stool, curiosity. Until next time, everybody, see you later.
Thanks for listening. You have been listening to the Future of Faith podcast, produced by Future of Faith with original music by me, Keedren Boston. You can learn more about the Sacred Listening Study and all the amazing things going on in relational ministry at www.futureoffaith.org. And don't forget to sign up for our newsletter, where we feature incredible ministries, sacred listeners, and cutting-edge research, all for free, delivered right to your inbox. Thanks for listening. This is the Future of Faith.